Good day, everyone, and welcome to the PTSD Buddies podcast. I'm your host, Jamie McWhorter. PTSD Buddies is a nonprofit organization that helps people dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD Buddies provides online support through Facebook groups, and we currently have thousands of members all over the world. This podcast is dedicated to those members of PTSD Buddies, and these are their stories. Now, Nita has PTSD through workplace trauma. She was bullied at work, and it really took an effect on her. Now, she did try to stick with it for a very long time, which really shows Nita's strength. But in the end, she had to leave her job, and it really took a toll on her. But Nita went from being scared to take a bath in the morning because it reminded her of getting ready for work, to actually helping others deal with their PTSD. So Nita is a success story. Nita is a hard-working PTSD buddy, and she's here today to share her story with us. Hey everybody, this is Jamie, your host of the PTSD Buddy podcast, and I'm here with another one of my actually really good PTSD buddies, someone I know I have never met, but we've had plenty of conversations. How you doing, Nita?
I'm doing well today. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, and Nita's up in Alberta. How's the weather out in Alberta today?
It's kind of chilly. We're having a slow start to spring, but we could be in the middle of winter, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see the winter go.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think we all are.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. So Nita, do you have any idea how long you've been a member of PTSD Buddies?
You know, I found PTSD buddies by accident. Ran into another PTSD buddy in the River Valley on a bike ride, and he just happened to mention that he had PTSD, and I said, "Oh my God, I've just been diagnosed with PTSD," and he told me about PTSD buddies. So I'm so grateful that that chance meeting happened, and I think I've been a member for about 2.5 years.
Wow, that's pretty cool that you met somebody on a bike ride. I
Yeah,
know you're a great member. I've seen your posts. You give a lot of great advice.
thanks.
Have you been dealing with PTSD for a long time?
It's coming up on 3 years, and I think I actually had PTSD going on for a long time before it was actually diagnosed and before I actually got really sick with it.
Yeah.
Um, I sort of, there's a expression called the boiled frog. And if you're not familiar with that, it's like if you put a frog in a pot of water and you slowly keep turning up the heat, the frog doesn't realize that the water is getting warm. And then by the time it realizes the water is too hot, it has no strength to get out.
Oh,
And so I think that's sort of what my experience was. I think I was a boiled frog. So I think I was gradually getting sicker and sicker and sicker without realizing what was happening to me. And until I had no choice but to go get medical help because I knew I was really in trouble. Yeah.
the boiled frog. I can't believe I've never heard of that before. That's fantastic. That's a great way to, and that's a great analogy of it. Wow.
Yeah, it's actually my psychiatrist explained it to me that way. It's the boiled frog syndrome.
Wow, you
Yeah,
heard it here first. All right.
yeah, yeah. It can creep up on you. And I kind of wish that I had known more about PTSD because I had symptoms. I was having shaking, I was having dry heaves, I was having panic attacks in the morning before I went to work. Um, I was having nightmares for a couple of years. I mean, I had a lot of symptoms going on that I just dismissed and didn't pay attention to.
Yeah.
And I think that was the PTSD creeping up on me. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you probably didn't even realize what was going on. I mean, most people with PTSD don't even realize they have it for the first little bit of their lives, dealing with it.
Yeah. I believe that to be true as well. Yeah.
What was life like before PTSD?
It was good. I was outgoing. I had a big circle of friends. I skied, I skated, I went to theater. I went to symphony. I had a job that I loved. I was a high performer. I gardened, I camp, I ski. I was very engaged in life and very optimistic and outgoing and friendly and hardworking and kind of was really enjoying my life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so you sound like a very sociable, on the go person.
I was. And then PTSD came into my life.
Yeah.
And I remember when I finally left work and I was so sick, although my psychiatrist doesn't like me to use the word sick. She said, use the word traumatized. I was so traumatized that I remember laying in bed under a blanket and just focusing on breathing, just trying to breathe in and out. That's all I could do. And
Right.
just lay under a blanket and shake.
Wow.
And yeah, I shook for 2 years and a medication finally resolved that, thank God. And I had dry heaves, I had panic attacks, I had nightmares, I was extremely hypervigilant, um, very noise sensitive. Um, what else? I had the full gamut. I had it pretty bad. I was a pretty acute case by the time I finally went to get medical help. Yeah, I was in trouble. I was really in trouble.
Did you realize something was wrong and just kept hiding it, or did you like go?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kept going to work every day and just pushing through without paying attention to what was happening to me.
Right.
and and I just got sicker and sicker and sicker until I realized I am not well. I am not well. Something is terribly wrong. And at that point, I kind of had no choice but to go to my doctor and say something's wrong. Like I'm not functioning. Yeah.
Did anyone else notice it before you, or were you the first one to notice the difference?
No, it was me. It was me. Yeah. Yeah. It was me. No one, I live alone, so nobody was pointing it out to me.
Right.
And I was still high performing at work. I was able to pull it off. Um, I had to really dig deep, but I was still high performing. So yeah, it was quite the journey, and trying to find help is a real challenge because I'm not military or first responder,
Yeah.
and I was really, really in trouble. And you're traumatized. You are really in dire straits, and you're trying to find help. And so I remember phoning the Canadian Mental Health Association.
Yep.
I went to the Sexual Assault Center. I went to ADAC. I went to the walk-in psychiatric clinic at our local hospital.
Yep.
I was casting my net all over the place trying to find help. And I finally phoned my provincial psychological association and asked for the names of psychologists who specialize in PTSD and trauma. And I got the name of a woman and I left her a voicemail, and I didn't hear back from her for a few days. And I phoned again and said, look, don't mean to harangue you, but I'm really in trouble. And
Yeah.
she phoned me back. She phoned me back and I went and saw her, and I think she probably saved my life.
That's
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
yeah,
That's amazing because a lot of times that's a really difficult thing for someone with PTSD to do to is to make that phone call. I mean, I know myself, I struggle with phoning the pizza man sometimes, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah, my phone is still unplugged 24/7.
yeah,
And yeah, I've only been recently able to turn on my cell phone, but yeah, the startle response is still pretty strong.
yeah,
And making phone calls, I more tend to, I'll rather hop in my car and drive somewhere to ask a question as opposed to making a phone call. Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
struggle
understand
a
that.
bit with that too. I think that's very common. Yeah,
Yeah. You talked about, let's talk about some of your symptoms. You said nightmares are a thing, hey?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those have now subsided. I
That's
still
good.
dream about my trauma was workplace related. So I still have dreams about work, but they're not nightmares anymore. So I'm really grateful that the nightmares have stopped. But they used to wake me up in the middle of the night, and um, that's a real classic symptom. And I'm glad that they have eased. I'm coming up on 3 years now since diagnosis. So they've backed off, and the shaking is gone due to a medication, which is fantastic. And I haven't had a panic attack for quite a while. And um, I I'm feeling pretty good. I'm still a little hyper vigilant for the mailman.
Yep.
I'm still a little scared of opening my front door and grabbing my newspaper and my mail. I'm still scared of the phone call ringing, like a incoming phone call or incoming email. Anything incoming, or if I see somebody walking down my pathway or anything incoming has to sort of be assessed for a threat.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I get that.
yeah,
I think all our
yeah,
listeners would understand that.
yeah. And
You said work.
and
Sorry.
I have trouble in really exposed areas. Like when I'm working in my garden, if I feel too exposed, I have to come in the house and sort of regroup and have a cup of tea and maybe do a meditation and force myself to go back out. Like sometimes, and the agoraphobia was really bad in the earlier days, and I still sort of have days where I have to push through the agoraphobia, where I'm scared to go outside, scared to leave my house. Yeah, it's really something. It's not a condition I wish upon anybody, that's for sure.
No, it's one I share with you when you go outside, and sometimes you just feel like there's eyes on you.
Yeah,
That's what I feel. I feel like there's everywhere. That as soon as I go outside, people are just staring at me. I understand that one.
yeah,
Can we go back to what you talked about earlier? You said you dealt with workplace trauma. So you dealt with
yeah,
workplace trauma, and then you continued to go to work?
yeah,
That must have been
yeah.
so hard.
Yeah, I think it kept traumatizing me further and further.
I bet
I
it
was
did.
bullied. I was bullied really badly. And
Wow. Oh my goodness. I can't imagine. I'm so sorry to hear that. Like to be
yeah,
traumatized is one thing, but to continue to go back to that trauma, that must have been so hard for you.
yeah, it just kept re-traumatizing me.
Yeah, I bet.
And then the human resources department doesn't really work for the employees. It works for management. And the guy I was working for was a real senior executive, so they sort of circled the wagons to protect him.
Really?
He since has been fired, I've learned,
Oh, okay.
um, but he did a lot of damage. And so after the first bullying institute, their solution was to rip me out of my job and put me somewhere else, which was just re-traumatizing the victim.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So that was just another trauma on top of trauma.
Yeah, that must
So
have made you feel so safe and comfortable.
yeah. And I have a lot of trauma in my life. Like I have sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. I had a lifetime of quite a few different traumas, and I think this just sort of pushed me over the edge.
Yeah.
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 So I'm a strong person. I've had a bit of a tough life, but this one pushed me over the edge, that's for sure, because work was always sort of my one safe place.
Right.
I knew that no matter what was happening, that I had my income and I had my job and I was a high performer and that I'd be okay.
Right.
And so when that was threatened, it was like I had no foundation left.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
How long did you keep going back to work? Do you have any idea? How long did you put up with it?
Well, I was with that organization for 15 years, and the bullying started, I would say, the last year was really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
I'm trying to picture what that must have been like, and it's hard for me to picture to what it was like for you to get up in the morning. Like I imagine you. I probably would have thrown up getting up in the morning
Well,
before going to work.
towards the end, I was having a panic attack in the morning
Right.
and shaking and crying before I was going to work, and kept going to work.
And you kept doing it, yeah.
And when I was first on sick leave, I couldn't even have a bath because it reminded me too much of getting ready to go to work.
Wow. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would trigger a panic attack.
Yeah.
Like I was really in trouble.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's amazing. Hey, it's amazing what will trigger you. Like taking a bath is only triggering right now.
yeah,
Right? Some amazing things, and that's something that some people don't understand. What? That triggers you? Yes, man, that
yeah,
triggers me. Okay.
yeah,
A trigger I have is
yeah,
balloons. I don't like balloons in my house. And people go, well, you
yeah,
can't have a party without balloons. Yes, I can, because balloons go pop, and then I get a cold sweat from the pop. Okay, I
yeah,
don't like it, right? But
yeah,
it's because that reminds us of a trauma that we've been through.
yeah, yeah.
I know a lady who what's traumatizing to her is toilets.
Really?
Yeah, because she went through something traumatic in the bathroom, right? So every time she sees a
Wow,
toilet, it reminds her of that trauma.
wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
brutal. That's
The things
brutal.
the things people go through that we have no idea.
Yeah.
What kind of things trigger you?
Well, being exposed still is a trigger. Dealing anything to do with my former employer is still a trigger. Like I still have all my banking there, and anytime I get a piece of correspondence, I have to switch that because it's a trigger. Um,
Wow,
I
you
can have
still
a
have to deal
bath.
with
I
it.
can have a bath now and actually enjoy it, for which I'm grateful.
Okay, yeah. Plus,
And
plus.
I used to not be able to blow dry my hair because of the noise, and it reminded me of going to work. And I can blow dry my hair today,
Yeah,
and I can put on makeup, and I think I'm still susceptible to crowds. I'm not good with crowds, and I'm not good with any aggression or violence or anyone being angry. Those can trigger me.
sure. Yeah,
Um, but it's like 1,000% better than it was.
that's
That's
good.
I can say that. I'm still triggered a bit by mail and email, but it's getting better. Like I can actually read the newspaper now, and I there was a time when that reminded me too much of work as well, because I
Yeah,
used to scan the newspaper for any relevant articles at work, and I couldn't even read the newspaper, and I've made it part of my daily routine to read the newspaper. So I've made great progress. So I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's taken a lot of hard work.
well, you definitely sounds like you've made some big steps to better your quality of life. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about like grounding techniques or things that you've done. Because I know, I have to say, I don't think I know anyone else in this world who has researched and looked up things about post-traumatic stress disorder like you have.
Oh, thanks.
You've been a part of quite a few of our group support meetings, and you always come with new info that I've never heard of, and you always blow me away. So, like,
Wow.
what thing? Because I know now you just said it yourself. You're doing much better. So, what things have you done to make it better?
Well, I found educating myself about PTSD was really important because when it's happening to you and you know nothing about it, and you're having the first panic attack of your life, and you wonder what the hell is happening to you, and you're dry heaving, or you're shaking like a leaf, or you can barely breathe. I mean, it's so terrifying when you don't understand what's happening to you. And so I did do a lot of reading about PTSD, and it helped me understand what was happening to my body and to my brain, because I consider it a brain injury. And you get stuck. The amygdala, which is in the back of the brain, is overstimulated and overheated,
Right.
and you're to get into your prefrontal cortex, which is where our executive decision making happens. Things like reading or researching help pull you out of that fear brain and into your front brain. And so reading and researching and educating yourself really helps, and it makes you feel like you're not so alone with it as well. And I keep a journal. I haven't looked back through my journals because it would be interesting to look back and see how far I've come. But I kept a journal from the first day I went off work, and it used to be how many panic attacks I had that day, if I had diarrhea, because that was my physiological symptoms were really bad, and um, um, just what I was struggling with. And I still keep a diary every day of like if I was able to grab the mail, if I read the newspaper, if I had a bath, what I did during the course of the day. And I give myself little hearts when like if I cook myself a good meal, I give myself a heart.
That's a great idea.
Um,
Great ideas.
yeah, yeah, just to reinforce. So the journaling is good. And I find the journaling really handy when you're going to your medical appointments because you can look back to when you last saw your psychologist or psychiatrist or GP, and then you can just quickly update them from there based
Yeah.
on your journal.
Yeah.
So
100%.
it's a good tool. And I meditate. I use a biofeedback machine that you can buy online called the Muse, MUSE, and it gives you instantaneous feedback on your brain activity and whether or not it's calm or overexcited. So I do a couple meditations every morning. I try to do yoga every day. I try to get out to walk 45 minutes every day. I read the newspaper every day. Um, I try to eat at least one good meal every day. Eating has always kind of been hard for me. And when you're really anxious, sometimes you have no appetite, right? Like it's really
Yeah.
hard to eat, but I try to make sure I eat at least one good meal a day. And what else do I do? Um, I try to reach out to friends if I'm feeling lonely, or I try to maintain. It's been hard with COVID, like
It
that's
has.
certainly
Yeah.
complicated things, but I try to maintain my friendships, and I've educated my friends quite a bit on PTSD. So I've been very blessed to have some friends that have stood by me because some haven't, right? That's
Yeah. That's
some
true.
people
Yeah.
don't get it. They don't get it, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Having
And
support from somebody else
I
is one of the biggest things. One of the biggest things in beating PTSD or dealing with PTSD, I believe.
say that again.
I said having good support from friends or family is one great tool of to have in dealing with your PTSD, I believe.
Absolutely. And I have a great medical team. I got a really good GP. I switched GPs in the middle of this because my other GP was just triggering me. And I got a really good GP now. He's fantastic. He's young and he's very interested in my file and is really good. And I have a really good doctor in psychology who works 2 days a week with the military and 3 days a week in her private practice. So she's very experienced, and I've done EMDR with her as well. And I have a really good psychiatrist who specializes in trauma as well. So building your medical team, which takes time because you got to wait for that referral from your GP to the psychiatrist, and
Right.
you got to find people that understand and can, like, it's hard to find help, but it's worth it because then you've got your support team around you, right?
Yep. 100%.
And that's been invaluable to me. Yeah, yeah.
You just said
So
you just
I
said
always say
EMDR. Did
there's,
you find that helpful?
say that again.
You just talked about EMDR. Did you find that
EMDR,
helpful?
yeah. I did find it helpful. I found it brought me into the present moment, and I think like we didn't do any trauma processing with it. We just sort of used it to calm me down
Right,
because I was so ramped up
right,
and shaking so hard, and my nervous system was so shot. And we just used the EMDR. She would take me to a place that I go camping in Jasper,
right.
and I would sit by the river and just use the EMDR and just calm down with it. And I found it quite helpful. Yeah,
Good.
I found it really good. We
Cool. Very
can't
cool.
do it now with COVID because we meet via Zoom, but I found it quite good. Yeah. And so I always tell people that the things for me that have helped with PTSD is time. Time is a great healer, and counseling, the right medications, and a lot of hard work. Like you got to force yourself out that door, even when you're battling agoraphobia. You have to push through the paddock and force yourself out for a walk, or force yourself to eat a meal, or you have to really work hard. It takes a lot of hard work. So those are my four things that I always tell people have helped me.
Yeah. And you talk about medication. Finding the right medication can be difficult as well.
Absolutely, it takes a bit of trial and error, and everybody is so different. And I'm really lucky that I didn't have a deep major depression with my PTSD. I had the real high blown anxiety, but
Right.
not the depression, for which I'm grateful. I wouldn't want to have PTSD and major depression at the same time. I don't know how people manage that. This pulling yourself out from under that must be horrendous. And I just kudos to people that do it.
Yeah, I hear you there, sister.
Yeah.
Um, what was I going to talk about just then? I had one. I had thought in my head. Oh, if you could talk to yourself, to the person you were before PTSD, is there anything you would like to say to them? Is there a message?
Yeah, my silver lining is uh, I will never sacrifice my physical or mental health ever again. And that is my priority, is my physical and mental health. And and nothing will ever come between me and that ever again. Not a job, not a relationship, not money, nothing, nothing. I will not. That's a new boundary. And I didn't have that boundary before. I used to just give it all away to my jobs and to relationships and to causes and to politics and to you name it. I was a full on 200% person. And I ran my own well dry. And um, so that's my silver lining. And that's what I would tell the previous Nita before she got sick is you're running your well dry and you're not taking care of yourself. And you have to be your own priority. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they really took a lot out of you, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I I can't imagine what you went through. I still
Yeah. It was rough.
I still keep thinking about you getting up in the morning and having to go face this every day, knowing exactly what you're going to face.
Yeah, it was rough. It was really rough. And I worked a lot of overtime, and I had a very high stress job. It was a big enough job, and it was very high stress
Yeah.
without the bullying added on top. So it was sort of a combination of real high stress, really long hours, and then the bullying on top. So it was just a recipe for disaster.
Wow. Hey.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you think bullying is something that you face in high school or something, hey? But it you could face it anywhere, I guess, hey?
Absolutely. And for anyone who faces workplace bullying, there's a really good website called the Workplace Bullying Institute, and they have lots and lots and lots of articles about bullying in the workplace. And I did a lot of reading there when I first went on sick leave as well, because it was validating my experience. And basically the message is get out before it gives you PTSD. Get out. But I had been there 15 years. I had professional relationships. I knew the organization. I was well established. Had good working rapport with a lot of people, and a lot of loyalty to the organization. And so I didn't want to leave, right? So, but I didn't realize what was happening to my health. And yeah, yeah, yeah.
You kind of just answered.
So
You kind of just answered my next
grateful.
question.
I'm grateful to have. I feel like I'm going to hit remission, and I'm grateful for that. And um, yeah, and looking to the future, I think that I'll probably look for work that I can do from home,
Yep.
some contract work, yeah. And um, I'm going to be able to, I'm going to have to be careful to manage my stress levels, to draw firm boundaries, like 5 o'clock, that laptop shuts down, and set boundaries that I didn't set before. And it'll be a learning curve to re-enter working, right? I'll have to approach it differently than I always did. So it'll be a learning curve for sure, but my priorities have shifted. So
Yeah.
I think I can do it. Yeah.
I think you can too.
Yeah.
You kind of answered my next question, but I was just thinking as you were talking, I bet someone is going to be listening to this who is being bullied at work.
Yeah.
Is there any advice you could give to them?
Well, I would say get out, because HR doesn't help. HR is there for management. They are not there for the employees. And if you're being bullied, it only accelerates and increases in intensity. And it's very hard to stop once it gets started. And there's usually more than one person involved. And it does a lot of damage. And the damage, like for myself, I was so beaten down that for me to scoop the kitty litter or try to vacuum my house or cook a meal or even get changed, I often would sleep in my clothing because I was too scared to get into my nightgown. The damage that it does to you, like it's like every time you moved, you're beaten. You're just like whack-a-mole, right? And it does so much damage to your self-esteem and your self-confidence and your ability to care for yourself that it's immeasurable. And in my case, ended up with PTSD. So I would say get out. Like there's got to be, you have to be your priority. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be your priority, because if you are not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be any good to anybody else.
That's very true.
Nita, I want to open the floor now to, is there anything you want to talk about? Is there any stories that you could share with us with you when it comes to your PTSD and when it comes to finding new steps to deal with your PTSD? Is there any stories that you look back on?
Well, there's a really good workbook called the Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook, and it's by a woman called Kristen Neff, spelled Neff. And it's a really, really good workbook. And online, there's some meditations, some guided meditations that accompany the workbook. And it's all about using self-compassion to heal.
Right.
And I found that my psychiatrist recommended it to me, and I found it really helpful tool. So I found that really good. There's a book by a psychiatrist called Bessel van der Kolk called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's all about PTSD. And I read that and I found that to be quite good as well. And there's a volume 1 and 2 of books called The Body Remembers, and by an author called Babette Rothschild. And I was just reading volume 2 yesterday when I was having a bit of a rough day. I find when I read, when I'm having a rough day, if you just do some reading about PTSD, it helps calm me down. It makes me understand that, yeah, this is what's going on in my brain, or I'm having a flashback, or
Yeah.
I've been triggered, or it just sort of helps me get out of my real terror place.
Yeah. I get that.
I
Yeah.
lived in terror for 2 years. That was the only emotion that I had. And I didn't get aggressive or angry, or I haven't cried. I haven't mourned the loss of my health and my career. I still have some ground to cover in that regard. I've done a lot of letters to self with the different traumas in my life, like just using that self compassion approach. Um, and I don't know, it's a healing journey, and I would say not to give up hope, and keep looking for the right help, keep doing the hard work, don't give up, and you can heal. I think it's something that I will have with me for the rest of my life, but I have tools now in my toolkit that I can pull out. Like, I know, like, I can sit down and do a meditation. I can do some yoga. I can go for a walk if my anxiety is getting really high. A real vigorous walk helps to bring it down, or a bike ride. Even if it's cold in the winter, I walked, and the cardio was huge, just to bring down anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, and it's building your toolkit of things that you can do to help manage your condition. And we might have PTSD for the rest of our lives, but I think that we can heal a lot of it and set ourselves up for future chapters. Yeah.
Yeah. I get
Not
that.
not to give up. Not to give up.
That's 100% good news, or good tips there. Don't give up. That's a big
Don't
thing.
give
Don't
up.
give up. Because a lot of people there think they're alone when they're dealing with their feelings with PTSD.
Yeah, and that's where the PTSD Buddies Facebook site saved my life too.
Yeah.
I'm sure you saw some of my early posts when I was just a mess, and it was a lifesaver to find that website and just connect with other people that understood what I was going through without having to explain a lot. So very grateful to you, Jamie, for that.
Well, thank you for saying that. And you're right.
Yeah,
It's that's a big thing. Finding people that you can relate to, who understand what you're talking about. Right?
yeah.
And just let me say, you went from not being able to take a bath to giving advice about PTSD now on PTSD Buddies.
That's right.
Right? That's
That's right.
huge.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I'm really glad to share my experience and my knowledge, because people did it for me when I was really struggling. And so now, if I could give back by helping others, by giving them a hand up, or a leg up, I'm glad to do that. Like, it's a horrible condition. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's it's a horrible thing when you're in the throes of it and it's in the acute phase.
Yeah.
And I I was hanging on just by a thread. And I had a suicide plan. It was pretty detailed, and but it was very yogic. I was going to change my name and leave my city. And I had even picked up the forms to change my name. And I picked out my new name, Janelle Breckenridge.
Yeah.
And it was so that was just burying my name, because I felt like the person that I was had died
Right.
anyway. So it
Wow.
was just a matter of formally burying my name. And um, so
That
I
must
was
have been an ugly
I was
feeling.
I was in a pretty awful place in my head,
I bet.
and so I get it. It can be really dark, and so talking to other PTSD buddies is critical. Critical.
And I think I know people that are going to be listening to this are going to be inspired by your words, right?
Oh, thanks.
I
That's
guarantee
good.
it. There are people out there going through workplace trauma like you, who, like you, would be triggered by any kind of morning routine because it reminds them of going to work, right? It's funny how
Yeah.
everybody hates the sound of their alarm in the morning. Hey, everyone hates that because it reminds them of, I guess, work.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and these are triggers that you probably won't have to deal with every day, but you might have to deal with them like your entire life. I mean, certain triggers will stick with us forever. Do you find that?
I think so. I think so. But I think we learn to recognize that you're being triggered.
Yeah.
And I remember in the early days, I used that grounding exercise a lot that Mitchell had posted, where 5 things you can see, 4 things you can
Yes.
touch. That one. Yeah, I can never remember all of them, but I would just do it. I would do it when I was walking. I would do it when I was sitting here in the house. Grounding techniques are really good. Really
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And just even
we got a
tuning
few good
into
ones I've
your
seen on the YouTube channel too.
surroundings, like a clock ticking or the wind blowing, or just being aware of what's going on in your environment to bring you into the present moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I was just saying, we got some good grounding techniques on our PTSD Buddies YouTube channel too that I like to look at from time to time.
Excellent.
Is there any closing or final thoughts you want to share now? I have no more questions for you, so I kind of leave the floor to you now. This is your episode. So is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, just hang in there and know that it will get better. Give it time. Give it time. Do
Yeah.
the work. Get your counseling. Get the right meds. Do your work. Give it time. Hang in there. Don't give up. Don't give up. That's mostly it.
Well, you're definitely one of the hardest working PTSD buddies out there when it comes to beating this. I'm really proud to know you because I've seen you go from that person who can't take a bath to a teacher of a better quality of life. So keep doing what you're doing because you're definitely
Thank
inspiring
you.
others.
Thank you, Jamie. That's very kind of you. I'm glad to help others. That's for sure.
Yeah. And well, if there's nothing else, I just want to say thanks so much for being on the PTSD Buddies podcast. It's always great talking to you.
Good to talk to you too, Jamie, and thanks for all you do.
Oh, it's always my pleasure because you said yourself, helping others is what helps us deal with our PTSD.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. And
okay, you take care of yourself.
Yeah, you too. Now, cheers. Thanks for joining us on this episode of PTSD Buddies podcast. I sure hope you enjoyed the show, and I sure hope you join us for the next episode of the PTSD Buddies podcast. And remember, if you or someone you know is dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, please look for PTSD Buddies on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Come join one of our groups and find your PTSD buddy today.